Hello. Okay. Hey, welcome everybody. About to start the session with Kathy Zand. It's passwords are broken, passkeys are coming. Kathy is the director of marketing for Cadence WP and has been working with WordPress for well over a decade. She has both technical and marketing experience and has worked with a number of brands in WordPress space. She has also helped numerous organizations empower their business with WordPress. She helped organize a couple of WordCamps and she loves the Phoenix WordPress community like family. She currently lives outside Denton, Texas, where she can often be found walking doggos and hanging out in horse bars. Everybody, welcome, Kathy Zand.
You guys, thank you for that great welcome. Are you guys happy to be back at WordCamp Phoenix? Yeah. Woo! Camp Phoenix. I keep saying, oh, remember last year of our lives was felt like last year. It is so good to be back, and I'm so glad that you're here in this session. Security. I know security is not always fun to talk about, but we're going to have fun today because you guys are here. And I see those smiling faces, and you are ready to have some fun talking about passwords, right? But first, I want to get to know you guys a little bit. You just heard a little bit about me. I want to know, has anyone in this room ever had their WordPress site hacked? Or you worked with somebody, one of your clients had a hacked site, and it's just like, what are you guys doing? You know, how many people have been phished, like successfully phished? You click the link and oh my, and maybe even halfway through it, you something's not right here. What did I just do? Anybody get phished? So we've got some people who've gotten phished. Ever go on a site called Have I Been Pwned or found or had any kind of notification that your information is on the dark web? I think we all have. If you're on the internet, you're probably on the dark web too. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, is kind of the state of authentication. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but passwords are kind of broken. And there's a new technology coming. It's not fully here yet. There are a few places you can take advantage of it, passkeys. I'll tell you a little bit more about it and why it's so cool, why I am so excited about it as a security person, and how you can start using passkeys in your life. But also we're going to talk about some of the things you can do about passwords today in order to keep your information and your digital life safe. So let's get started. Before WordPress, guess what? I was the kid who's like, this internet thing is going to be huge. I'm going to do this. This is my life now. And I inherited a server set up by the IT guy. And I went to go check on something. And there was a little file in the root of my website, my company's website, saying, you need to tighten the security on this server. You've been hacked. And I was just like, hair on fire. I mean, I was just a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. I want to just write HTML and CSS and JavaScript. I just want to have fun. What's this stuff? And they told me I was going to security school. And so I learned how to spoof emails, which got me in a little trouble, but also a lot of fun. There's fun things in security too. The great thing about hacking and security is that you get to break some rules. You get to have some fun. You get to think out of the box. It's one of the reasons I love security, because that kind of innovation happens at the edge. It doesn't happen within the rules. So I love security, but I also really love WordPress. So right now I am really focused on a product that I think is amazing, which is Cadence. I'm out at the sponsor booth. Come get a Rubik's Cube. Come say hi. Talk to me about security or talk to me about Cadence, whatever you want to talk about. All right, so security I know is kind of dry sometimes. And some of us, anybody here ever use their pet's name as a password? Yeah, I've known a lot of people who do. My mom's password forever was her dog's name. I'm just like, Mom, please stop. Well, I put a 33 at the end of it. That makes it better. Okay. This is Milo. Milo is my mini dachshund, and he would like you to think about passwords like a dachshund. Very unique and very long. That's my password dachshund joke. But what do we do when we're thinking about passwords? We want to make something unique that nobody can guess. So we think about something that's kind of unique to us, the street we grew up on, our kids' names, something that we can remember, our zip code. And we do these combinations because we're trying to thwart hackers and make something that's really unique. That's kind of the psychology of what we've been doing with passwords. But we also have that one password that ends up being used everywhere. And that's not really working for us anymore. Maybe 20 years ago, we could do that and have our one password that we used for everything. But things like dictionary attacks, I also have a cat. This is Sven. He's got 7 toes. He's very unique. Sven123. He would like to tell you out there, and the source is from NordPass in 2020. Are the people using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Yeah, I mean, these are some pretty common combinations. So what is this telling us? People want a password that's going to be easy. I don't want to have to remember it. I'm just going to across the top of the keyboard and let me in. They don't want trauma when they're trying to get into whatever they're trying to get into. And so this is some of the common passwords that we see in breaches. Yes, I have many animals. This is Bodie. He's a golden retriever. He's an actual registered golden retriever, which goes against all of my values, but oh my gosh, he's so cute and he loves everyone. And his name, registered name, is Bodhisattva Shasta Sage. Also not a good password. He'd like to tell you about something called password databases. And this is the state of passwords right now. If you go on GitHub and do a search for password dictionaries or password databases, hackers are sharing password collections, giant text files, CSV files, of all of the passwords that they have collected on hacked WordPress sites, adobe.com a few years ago. It's not just little sites that get hacked, it's big sites that get hacked. It doesn't matter what you're doing online, it's a target for hackers to try to get in there and try to get passwords. They put them in these databases, they sell them, they share them. In 2021, there was a password collection called RockYou 2021. This was the largest collection, largest password compilation with 8.4 billion entries. So there's a site called Have I Been Pwned? It's like Have I Been Owned, but with a P because hackers like to be clever. If you go on there right now and type in your email address, if you've been alive on the internet any length of time, there is one of your accounts at least in there. At 12 billion, over 12 billion accounts have been breached and are in this collection. This is a great tool. Actually, I would definitely recommend that you go put your email address in there and ask to be notified when your information shows up in a breach. They send you an email and it's like, oh, great, another notification that somebody didn't tighten their security. You know, it just keeps happening. Passwords are just not what they used to be. Users, they choose easy to remember passwords. They reuse their passwords. You know, my Wi-Fi password at home when we lived in Arizona not long ago, it was like this really complex password because I wanted my Wi-Fi to be safe. And my kids are like, oh, that's the password. They started using it everywhere for their logins. Now in a breach, I need my one password again. According to Verizon, now this is not just for WordPress, this is for all, like mostly enterprise accounts. 81% of breaches start with either stolen passwords or weak passwords. So where does that leave us? Kind of leaves us in a place where passwords are kind of a problem. So we should be using password managers, right? Who's using a password manager? Oh, look at all those hands. You are my people. You are my people. Anybody hear about the LastPass breach that happened last fall? You were there. Yeah, I watched this. And then on Christmas, so on the Friday before Christmas, they basically let us know that this breach was more worse than they had originally told us, and that customer vaults containing all of our passwords had been exposed to malicious attackers. I'm sitting Christmas morning, well, not sitting, I'm cooking. I'm making a actual lemon meringue pie with lemons I grew myself. because I am Martha Stewart as well. And making lemons into lemonade, I'm sitting there and I'm like, those guys, I know what they did. They were trying to hide this, just like all those politicians who drop news on Friday afternoons right before Christmas. And I made a video about it because I was mad. And then I researched what was going on Reddit. And not only not all of our information that was stored in LastPass was encrypted, there was some stuff that was stored unencrypted, and I was mad. And so those videos kind of took off, and that was kind of fun for a bit. But it just really underscored that where you put your passwords needs to be secure too. And so it's really important that you evaluate the password managers that you're using. Norton LifeLock also had a breach. Unsure if customer passwords were exposed there. And then just recently, we heard about Dashlane, Bitwarden, and Safari. You know, you have that browser extension that makes your passwords just auto-populate there. Well, if there was an iframe, those passwords were automatically being filled into an iframed malicious site. So it was exposing passwords in a negative way there as well. So we have to be really careful what we're doing. Again, just kind of underscoring the problem with passwords. So what do? We try to solve this problem with two-factor authentication. Woo, who's using two-factor? Who hates two-factor? Oh my gosh, you're not alone. According to Verizon, 28% of users actually use two-factor authentication. 28% of people who are holding their nose, looking at their phone, saying, I'm just trying to get my job done. And you know, security is a continuum. You have something over here that is not secured, and anybody can access it. And then you have the most secure thing in the world, which is encased in cement and buried in your backyard, and no one can get to it, and it's completely unusable. So there's this continuum of usability and security, and we have to find where our passwords belong in all of this. Your test site, maybe over here, who cares? Max123, log in, whatever. Your bank account, over here, two-factor authentication, fully secured, maybe even using some strategies I'll tell you in a minute. You're using apps, right? Instead of SMS-based two-factor. We've heard some stories about some SMS two-factor authentication, which have been exposed in SIM swapping attacks. There's one story, if you research it, this guy in cryptocurrency, he was going to sleep and he noticed that his phone wasn't connecting to the cell tower, and he was like, I'll deal with it in the morning. Goes to sleep, and the next morning, $100,000 worth of cryptocurrency gone from his Coinbase account because someone had SIM swapped him. He was very public about the fact that he was into crypto and all of that kind of stuff, but you know, with crypto, when your money's gone, your money's gone. And his accounts were secured by two-factor using SMS. So if that's all an account is allowing you to do is to use SMS-based, still use it. It's better than not using it, but still try to use an authenticator account. That's the way to go, isn't it? Until it's not. All right, so this story I just found recently. Misk is a company, I think they're based in Cyprus, but they do apps, iOS, Google Play, Android, all that kind of fun stuff. They did some research into what's going on with authenticator apps in the app stores. There are rogue authenticator apps. There's an app that's charging $40 a month for you to store your two-factor auth. And then, the joke here is, would the real authenticator app please stand up? Which one do you choose? Who's the right one? One of these apps had over 500,000 users, and they were phoning home information. So the seed code that makes that QR code, all that funky stuff that gives you your number that changes every 30 seconds, all of that was being phoned home. They are writing, follow them on Twitter because they're writing about the things. They're doing a lot of active security research in this realm, and they're starting to get some notoriety there, which I think is absolutely amazing. But, we just have to be very judicious about what we're doing. This all just underscores that passwords have a little problem. And I don't think therapy is going to help. Under attack right now with things that are on GitHub, on the dark web, wherever. They are tied into ScriptKitty's scripts, and they just spray and pray on the internet looking for something that's going to work. Phishing attacks. A lot of hacked sites end up with phishing kits. Also, phishing kits are things that you can find on GitHub too. I download them and Avast yells at me. But they're very interesting. Like, what are they doing? Where are they sending it? That kind of stuff. But you can find examples of phishing kits. They end up on hacked sites, and people send out emails saying that your PayPal account is going to lose all of its money unless you act now. You have to change your password, put in your current password, put in your changed password, and then by the time that's all done, they've got your current password, and your password didn't get changed. We have problems with 2FA. I don't think I need to tell you anymore about that. Like, really, do I have to really type this number in? And oh my gosh, it's going to change in a second. It's just complex and it's problematic. And then if we're storing our passwords in a password manager like everybody's telling us to do, what happens if that password manager has an issue? Some authentication basics. Authentication is basically the security term that talks about how a service knows you are who you say you are. So it's either something you know, something you have, like a key card or a pass key, or something that you are, like your biometrics, Face ID, Touch ID, Windows Hello, I think works in that way, though I've never used it. Your retina scans, it's something that you are, something that's testing that nobody can replicate unless they replicate your finger, and there's a movie about that, I'm sure. What's coming to save us is the Web Authentication Standard. It's a specification by W3C, which is an organization that basically does standards for the internet, HTML, all of the things that we use in order to communicate online. They're this body that basically standardizes these things. And FIDO, which stands for Fast ID Online. They've worked together to bring us passkeys. This basically is allowing servers to register and authenticate users using public key cryptography. That sounds really scary. It's not. You're probably using it somewhere now. And these are now supported on all of the major browsers. Passkeys are coming. We're right at the cusp of this being a thing. Public key cryptography. Anybody ever send a message using PGP or GPG? Transport layer security, TLS. Have you logged into FTP and you see, like, we need to have a TLS connection here? SSL. Anybody ever visit a website using HTTPS? Hopefully we all are. If you've ever used a key to log into SSH, and if you've ever used Bitcoin, any Bitcoin aficionados here? Crypto? All of this stuff is based on public key cryptography. It's basically a public and private key pair that allows you to authenticate. How does this work? Well, with passkeys, this is what happens. So you have your device, you have your computer, and you go to a website and you say, I want to register an account. And the server politely says, sure, send me a public key. So on your device, on your computer, a public and private key pair is generated. And then you send that public key to the server. The private key is stored in your keychain if you're using a Mac. I don't know Windows, but it is stored securely on your device. Or it can be stored in password managers. NordPass, for example, is rolling out passkeys right now, so you can store it in one of their systems as well. Then your registration is complete. I'll demo this in just a bit. Actually, I'm going to demo it. So this is WebAuthn.io. If you are a developer and you're looking to add this kind of information or to this kind of authentication to a project, they have tons of libraries here, Python, Go, whatever you're using. Java, my first programming language. I didn't like it. So I'm going to show you how this works. I'm going to register an account. I'm just going to call it Kathy's Aunt. I register an account. If I am, okay, then I'm going to say we're creating a passkey. It's going to ask me for my fingerprint. That's basically the authentication I'm using with Chrome here. Then we can authenticate. I give it my print again. Ta-da, I'm logged in. Fun times, hey? All right. So I learned about all of this stuff from a really smart guy, and I'm going to give him some mad props. His name is Timothy Jacobs, and he is so young and so brilliant. And we geek out on security together. I am going to show you what he's developed for iTheme Security Pro. This is pretty nifty. Let's register Sven. And I'm just going to use my email just to make it fast. I'm just going to do a Sven123 because I'm doing a live demo. Don't use Sven123. I'm going to set him up as an administrator. And that's what I'm doing wrong. Thank you. All right, so I'm adding him as a new user on my little test site that is chugging along as best it can. All right. And of course, I'm getting all of these alerts that I'm using a very bad password. I'm going to log out Sally from her cat log. And now I'm going to log in using a passkey. And I'm going to put in Sven, use the passkey, and where is it? And that is the magic of a live demo. You know what? Oh, you know what I need to do? I need to set up his passkey. That's what I didn't do. There we go. I'm going to log in, and it's going to yell at me about setting up a passkey. All right, there we go. Yep, I know it's a bad password. Going to add a passkey, and it's going to save it on the device. Now I'm going to use my fingerprint. I'm going to name Sven's bad passkey. There is a sensor on my computer that is right. Yes, all of this is going to use biometrics. I could do it on my phone, and it would use Face ID. Yeah.
If your phone and your laptop are making the same manufacturer, they'll transfer. So
Yes, it'll all be within the same ecosystem. Yes. So that's basically how it works. Now Sven is logged in, and I'm going to delete his account because I know someone out there is going to try to log in right now, right? Oh, wait. All right. So that's basically how that authentication works with a passkey. I'll deal with that in a bit. Okay. Let's go back to the presentation. So mad props to Timothy Jacobs. He's the one that came to iTheme Security and said, hey, this is going to be really big. This is going to be the way people authenticate. Let's be first. And they were. This is my final pet. This cat has so many names. It started out as Luna, and then it's Luna Bug, and then it's Buggy, and now it's Bugga, and now she's just old and cranky and doesn't know her name. So she can't have a password. She has too many names. We would never remember it. She has some recommendations because she's old and wise. So as you see passkeys being offered, places that I have seen them, and maybe you guys have recommendations where you've seen them too. I have seen Apple rolling them out. Google is rolling them out. PayPal says they're rolling them out. NordPass is just like, I think last week, announced that they are rolling them out and that they are a password manager, and you can store your passkeys in NordPass if you want to be independent. Like, say you have a Windows device and you have a Macintosh and you want your password store in sort of a neutral place where you can use them across ecosystems. So use passkeys where you see them. Until then, remember Milo, the dachshund's advice, long passwords. I'm going with 16 characters. If it gets to 72, I'm going to quit the internet. That's my rule. But every year it's like, okay, I'm going a little bit longer. I'm going a little bit longer. Use a reputable two-factor authentication app. You know, I know Google Authenticator is kind of, you know, you get a new phone and it's like, okay, I got to set this all up again. It's kind of a pain, but it's Google, you know? So just make sure you trust the vendor that you're using. Make sure you're using reputable password managers. My recommendation is 1Password. 1Password has an additional secret key that just makes things much more complex because they don't know it. You hide it somewhere, print it out somewhere, and you never ever use it. 1Password is really good. For those of you that don't have that price tag, Bitwarden is really amazing. It's also open source. It's like $10 a year. NordPass has a good solution as well. Just make sure it's something that you're going to use for a password manager. And here's a strategy that you can use if you're kind of wary about those password managers and putting all of your eggs in one basket. This is called the blind password strategy. So you have your password manager. Let's say it's Bitwarden. It generates a password for you. You store that. You don't use your browser extensions to auto-populate your passwords. We can copy and paste. We're all adults, right? Copy and paste that password when you're registering an account, and then take 4 digits that you keep up here. You don't write them down. You don't put them in your password manager. You can keep 4 digits. You've got PIN cards and debit cards and all of these fun things. 4 digits that you remember, that you don't type anywhere, but you append that to the end of your password. So you register the password that's been generated, add 4 characters, and that's what goes into that account. So if your password manager is ever compromised, it's useless without knowing that 4-digit code. And you're never going to tell anybody that one, right? Because that's like the 4-digit code. But it's a strategy that a lot of people are using in order to deal with the problems of passwords. If you are a developer and you are building a system and you are building authentication into that system, here are some resources that you can use in order to add passkeys, WebAuthn into any of your projects. Highly recommend this. The slides will be available, I think, on the WordCamp site. All of the speaker slides will be there so you can copy and paste, but you can also just go search for these things. There's tons of people who are advocating. Apple has some passkey advocates, but it's up to us to kind of get this word out there that there is a new way to authenticate. And I'll tell you what, in 10 years, our kids are going to point at us and be like, you use passwords? There's a new way of doing it, and it's coming now. And because you're in this talk, you're on the cutting edge of all of it. So my name's Kathy Zant. I work for Stellar WP, Liquid Web. Cadence is my jam right now. I'm really excited about blocks, but you can follow me anywhere. I'm doing YouTube videos on security as things like passkeys and password managers that don't store information correctly. As things motivate me, I'm posting YouTube videos, having a lot of fun there. And if you want to be on my newsletter and get updates when I'm angry about something or fun things are happening, you can do that as well. And with that, I am open for questions for the next 10 minutes or so. Copy of the slides are going to be up on the WordCamp Phoenix site, and I will probably put them up on my website or maybe even on Twitter. I don't know. Twitter is my work thing. If you like dog pictures, Instagram, but work stuff is all Twitter. But any questions?
Invade an e-commerce site. Is that just a really storyline, or is that something that I can get worried?
There's a lot of weird things that happen in storylines. I don't know if they really consult with security experts when they write things. It was a good show. Well, good shows are good. Sometimes there's an old joke, was it CSI, where they were just like, in the GUI with the Visual Basic is logging in with the JavaScript, and it's just like, what? These don't go together. What's going on? Storylines sometimes in Hollywood with security and with technology can be entertaining. So nothing is ever going to be hacker proof unless it's buried in your backyard encased in cement. They probably won't want to do anything with a computer that is unusable. Again, it's a security continuum, but passkeys, public key cryptography has been around for a really long time. And it has worked in so many different other implementations, like sending secure emails, being able to transact with cryptocurrency, your keys, your currency. That's basically the same type of methodology that's being implemented, and public-private key cryptography has been working. And so this is now coming to sort of a consumer level of logging in for the first time with passkeys and WebAuthn. Yeah. Here, I'll go here first.
I'm not an Apple person. It sounds like Apple
So on a PC or even a desktop, is there a scanner that I can try with a USB?
I'm not sure. I know that Windows Hello, and somebody, do you know about how Windows works?
So one of the beautiful things about this is it's a fairly wide standard, and you can actually get like a UV key
Yes.
to work with the same thing. So you just plug it into the USB port works. But there's another mode which is using a QR code, so you can actually authenticate over your phone on your computer. So it'll talk to the server and scan the code that's on the screen.
Yeah.
There's
So
a number of things, like there's a whole ecosystem. It's been bigger and like
Windows, is this all a part of Windows Hello? Is that,
no.
okay, all right.
But also the camera, you know, if your computer has support for face authentication, it can
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the question for everybody on the live stream, I need to repeat the questions. The question was, I'm talking all about Apple. Windows is, and Microsoft is implementing WebAuthn. Windows Hello is one of their implementations. YubiKeys are another way that you can use this in the here and now. It is obviously dependent upon the server that you're authenticating with in order to use any of this. So you can't go to Amazon right now and log in using passkeys because they haven't implemented it. You can, however, go onto Stripe and set up passkeys up on Stripe. And right now they have passkeys implemented as a two-factor authentication. So buy authenticator apps, you can use a passkey. It is slowly starting to not fully there yet. You guys are all on the cutting edge. WordPress example, that was using iTheme Security Pro. Yeah, they're the ones that have it implemented now. There might be some other ones in the repo, smaller ones, but it is the major one that is implementing. There was a question over here.
Yeah, you just bypass your passkey.
Yes.
What's stopping that from continuing for spend if it's super simple password?
What's stopping? Yeah, nothing at this point because there is still that password there unless you turn passwords off. So you'd have to turn on and make that in iTheme Security Pro. You would have to set it so that you are only using passwordless logins. And iTheme Security Pro has two ways of implementing that. They have an email link that you can send out, and then they have passkeys as the two methods of passwordless login.
It's okay if you don't know this answer, but a lot of these security plugins in the past disable a plugin and it's all gone. I can just FTP wipe that out. So I find, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like, cool, plugin gone, back to the password.
Yeah. Yeah.
There with that plugin,
Yeah, you'd be back to using the username and password if that is not there. Right. Because it's not replacing, like once WordPress core is like passkeys, then we'll start to see something like that. And that's coming. It's inevitable that comes, that it won't be plugin related, but it's just not there yet. Yes.
Hi,
Hi.
Kathy. Didn't get a chance to chat at the sponsor thing. I'm a security professional. There's a couple of things I want to clarify in this talk. So the one that was talking about compromises and passkeys, and one of the things in the passkey standard versus the WebAuthn standard is they made it available that you could synchronize keys across devices.
Mhm.
Apple wanted to make it easier.
Yes.
What that means, though, is that if somebody can compromise your Apple account,
Yes.
they have access to one of your passwords.
Right.
Where previously passkeys or security keys were based on the hardware, so you actually physically had enough to
Right.
log in. So it's actually not as secure as it used to be.
Yeah, it's also, on that particular continuum.
It made it more convenient, but
Right.
secure.
Right. So the statement is that passwords being done with, or passkeys being done within an ecosystem such as Apple's ecosystem, where they're storing it in a keychain and that's stored in your iCloud account. That's less secure than having an actual hardware key that's storing your passkeys. And that's true, but how many people are carrying YubiKeys right now in this room? Well, very few in a security talk. In the general public, even fewer. I don't know many general users. My mom's not going to carry a YubiKey, but she's going to use her fingerprint to log into an account in the near future because that's going to be easy. We need to make security easier for people who are living with this woman that was helping me with my husband. She's like, you have a hacker that lives in my Facebook. Like, tell me more. Like, what? Oh yeah, he's just in there. Like, change the password. Oh, I did that, but he's still there. Like, I don't know what's going on with you, but I don't know if I can help you, but let's try to set this up. Like, who lives with hackers in their accounts? Somebody that I met in real life who is not in WordPress and is not in security, obviously, is living with a hacker in her Facebook. So these are the people we need to help, and you guys are going to be the army of people who are going to help those people, because as you teach people who, you're building sites for other people and you're like, okay, this is what's coming here. I understand about passkeys. This is what's coming. This is what's happening. And you guide these people through it. They guide their friends and they tell two friends, and we're on the cutting edge. And everybody that's here, I just have to commend you for being on this cutting edge, because you're going to be the ones that is going to help all of us be more secure. Yes. Yeah, that's iTheme Security Pro is the one for WordPress. There might be some other ones in the repo. It's just the one. That's how I learned about it. Is Tim? It's a plugin, yes, and it's a pro paid plugin at this point. Say again.
What happens when iTheme Pro gets hacked?
When iThemes Pro gets hacked. Well, not necessarily. Sites can be hacked in a number of different ways, not necessarily a plugin vulnerability. And actually, if you look at a company called PatchStack just put out their state of WordPress security right now. And there are so many WordPress security. When I first started in it and I was cleaning hacked sites, and I estimated at one point, I've cleaned 3,000 hacked sites or more. WordPress security in 2016 or 2012 was way different than it is right now. There are so many security professionals who are focused on making things better. The plugin itself might have a vulnerability, might someday have a 0-day vulnerability, but here's the deal, that the authentication that's happening, what's happening on that particular site is getting a public key. The private key is stored on the user's phone, iCloud, computer. That private key, the public key is useless. Nobody can phish it from you. Nobody can log in with it unless they have the private key as well. There has to be that handshake between public and private key. That's how public-private key cryptography works. Those things have to work together. Now, if the private key on a user's computer gets, well, then we've got other issues. If your iCloud account is not being fully secured, you've got other issues. But making sure that you have your computer secured, all of that fun stuff is really important as well. But that public key on any of those sites that might possibly get hacked, those are useless. You can't use them anywhere else. They can't go into a password database to be used by hackers. So this is how Passkeys helps us. It can't be phished. The lady living with hackers in her Facebook can't give away her public key. It's being stored on some server somewhere. She doesn't have access to that public key. She can't give it away. The private key, she probably doesn't even know, how that is all working. All of those security decisions are being made by the technology. So it can't trick users. The number one security problem is sitting between the keyboard and the chair. It's people. It's people who get scammed. It's people who get socially engineered. It's people who give up their passwords in a phishing attempt because, I had to save my PayPal money. And we're trying to help them. And you guys are going to help them too. And with that, I got 1 more minute, 1 more question.
Is there a password manager that they implement for Teams?
1Password. One password is great for teams. To be able to have shared vaults, where you want to apply the principle of least privilege. Give people access for the only thing they need in order to do their job. The support guy doesn't need the Twitter password. The guy in accounting doesn't need the network password. So making those kinds of decisions, separating things into vaults that make contextual sense and giving team members access to that. I will say that when you offboard a team member, if it's a public account, don't just lock them out of the vault, change the passwords too. Don't just think, oh, well, they're not in the vault. They don't have the password anymore. You don't know if they stored it on their browser or, don't trust anyone. And with that, I need to wrap it up, but I am so grateful you guys came. Thank you. Thank you. You made it fun. Thank you. Yeah. No, I know. It's just.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Becoming a WordPress Developer with Crystal DeCosmo. She started working as a WordPress developer in December of 2017. She started working at Bluehost as a tech support. She then transferred to WordPress Live Consulting, beginning users on how to build websites. She got her first development job working developing sites in 2019 and left for Big Marlin Group in September of 2021. She is now a team leader for a small team of developers, encouraging them all to think big. Everyone, welcome Crystal.
So that was a great introduction because that's half of my speech. We'll start with really where I started. For those of you that don't know, Bluehost, it was Endurance at the time. I think it's Newfold now. They've changed their name like 3 times since I've left. But I started there doing hosting support. I was in school. I was going at that point for web design. And basically, I was introduced in some of our trainings to WordPress. Immediately changed my major to development and fell in love with WordPress. And kind of learned the hard way that they don't really teach you much in school. They do teach you stuff, but it's all outdated. The core stuff takes so long to get kind of going that it's already outdated by the time they get it to students. And that's just, even if you're in school, you kind of have to learn how to that. So everything I could in between calls. In between calls, I was on different websites doing what I could, but I started in very similar situations as most of you. And so while kind of waiting for that first job, kind of prepping for that, some of the things I recommend is, first and foremost, is get involved. We have huge WordPress communities here. Obviously, if you're here, you're probably plugged into one of them or have heard of them, but we have, I know of at least 2 that we have. We have the general meetup and we have the advanced meetup. And you can really connect to other developers. They teach on a variety of different subjects, and really getting plugged in is really the first place that I would recommend you start. The other thing is really kind of using resources. The ones that I found either in between calls or in between school classes when I could, free Code Camp, that one is free. Code Academy, they have a free account. They also have a paid account. I know I paid for it while I was in school because it helped with some of my assignments too. But honestly, my favorite so far has been Udemy. So if you guys have played with Udemy, they have Brad Chief is really, really good. They have, there's an Angela Wu that has an overview on all development. But really, truly, those Udemy classes is really what taught me what I needed to know. They have super project-based things that can kind of help take you from knowing nothing to feeling like you have a grasp of the knowledge. And that's going to help you on interviews. That's going to help you on whatever you're doing, because the first thing that as a interview is going to ask you is, what have you worked on? And it doesn't matter if you go to school or not. If you don't have a project in your repertoire that you can say, oh, I worked on this project. These are the challenges I faced working on this project. This is how I overcame it. They're going to move on to the next person. The other thing is studying WordPress specifically. So we have the codex at WordPress. I will still tell my junior developers now, if you don't know something, if you haven't checked the codex or the developer handbook, check it first and then come to me. Because that should be basically our coding standards for WordPress. So really getting to know that and getting to know that inside and out, if you're really wanting to develop themes and plugins, all of WordPress recommended stuff is in there. The codex also has sample code. I can't tell you how many times I don't want to write the code and I know that there's something in the codex, so I run to the codex, copy the code, and get something from there. And the other thing is practice. And I actually talked to one of my senior developers because he's seen more people come in to that job than anyone else at my company. And one of the things that he kind of advised me for this talk is to really tell you guys about developing your own themes, developing your own plugins before you're on the job. So the one that we use at my company is Understrap. We are Bootstrap based, but knowing Bootstrap is important anyway. But I recommend you guys learn how to do a general theme without Gutenberg, and learn how to code a Gutenberg theme. You don't know what company you're going to walk into. You don't know what job you're going to get. So the big thing here is know how to work with both. One of the biggest challengings, if you guys really want to challenge yourself, start with blank slate. So there is a couple of themes that have nothing built in for your base theme. You're starting from scratch. If you really want to challenge yourself, start with one of those, because you learn a lot just trying to figure it out. And then the last thing is really build your portfolio. It's the same thing that I was talking about before, where, especially as a new developer, if this is your very, very first job, they want to know what you've worked on. So if you don't have a portfolio in your first job, it's almost a disadvantage, because there will be someone who does. And in that portfolio, you can show some of the work you did after you get your first job as a developer. If you're going into more of development than design, I've never used it since my first job, because I could point to sites that I had worked on. But I have still had, when I was looking for my second job, there was still a couple that asked. My first job didn't allow me to have a portfolio live, because that was one of their non-compete agreements. So be aware of that too. Be aware of what you're signing. So then obviously, after you get past that point, it's time to look for the first job, right? So basically, my first job, I had graduated college, and I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I thought, because of how society teaches us, it was a given, right? I get out of college, I'm automatically going to get that first job. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of applications that have to go out. And the biggest thing with it is I put in multiple applications. I also let my supervisor know that I was looking for a job. This was not a surprise to my supervisor. And the reason I did that, and it actually played off in the end, is when I found a job, they needed me to start like now. A lot of times, especially with junior developers, they know it's your first development job, right? So they're not going to sit here and go, oh, well, we can wait for you, because they kind of know that this is your first job and they have more power than they think. So letting my supervisor knew that kind of let me go in, say, I'm leaving in a week. And he was able to actually make me still rehireable at Bluehost, because they wanted me to succeed. But because he knew, he was able to go to talk to HR. I'm still rehireable. I'm not leaving on bad terms, because I let him know that in advance. So that is one thing. As long as you're in that environment, I know that not everyone has that environment. I was in a very supportive environment that allowed me to do that. So if you are in that environment, I do recommend you letting your supervisors know that you're kind of going. If you're not in that environment, obviously keep it a secret. I know that kind of sucks, but it's just the environment that you're in and reading that room. So some of the tips that I have for that is really, I didn't do this till I was looking for my second job, but optimize your job searches. Optimizing that resume. I got somebody from Fiverr, and I basically paid them $100 to optimize my LinkedIn and my resume so that I came up in job searches. So how this all works is just like optimizing the web, and you don't realize until you realize that LinkedIn is the same thing. They have their own optimization system. So just having that done, you can actually get a lot more leads on jobs. You can get more people reaching out to you directly. And Fiverr was a great resource for that. The one thing I would advise is really look at the reviews. The guy that I went to is no longer doing it anymore. I checked before I came here so I could reference him out. But that got me on my second job. It made my job search go from it would have taken me months to it took me a month to find another job. The other thing is always have resumes on hand. You don't know who you're going to run into. You can be at a bar talking to someone and find out they have a company and they're looking for a developer. So it doesn't have to be, and I know that it's really weird, but I'm going to say this. Keep paper resumes with you when you walk into an interview. It is something that I know it's a little old school, but it is something that me being on the other side of it now, when people have paper resumes that they hand us, they get moved to the top of our pile. Have your portfolio ready. Have a the time. If it's on your resume, we will bring it up before you even get in. But we'll also ask you for it. There's a that employers do that. Number one, are you ready for it and are you prepared? The other thing is we want to talk about those projects in there, right? We want to talk about project, and we thought it was really cool. What tech did you use? What information can you give us? Because we also wanted that you actually did the project and you weren't just on Udemy just following along and not trying to problem solve it, right? We want to see what obstacles did you face in this Udemy class, because maybe the code was outdated, maybe it didn't work the same way. Make sure you have those anecdotes ready, because we want to know your thinking behind it. Start to finish, yeah. And if you only did a part of that project, that is fine, right? But we want you to talk about the parts that you did. We definitely want you to say, yeah, I did this as a team project, as a school project, or as whatever, but we definitely want to know what parts you played in it. The other thing that is huge is know your value. So when you walk into the room, know your value. And I will tell you guys a little bit of a horror story. My first job interview after college was for a company that was trying to get me to intern as a PHP developer, wanted me to give up my full-time job at WordPress Live. That way I was making okay money. I was making in meet to work whenever they felt that they wanted me to work. So no guaranteed hours for, I think it was less than minimum wage because they classified it under an internship. So obviously be very, very careful of those and run the other way. There is somebody that is going to pay you what you deserve to get paid. And I'm not saying for your first job, you're going to walk in and make $100,000 a year. That's probably not likely, but know the job market, know the value that you present to a company, and be willing to walk away and ask for more. So if you're sitting here saying, they offered me 40, but I really wanted 50, ask for 50. Worst thing that they'll do is say, we can't offer this. This is what we can offer you. But I can guarantee you, if you don't ask, you're not going to get it. And the other thing is be patient. You're going to run into bad jobs. You're going to run into this doesn't fit. Something doesn't feel right. Always follow your gut and be patient. Keep applying. You will get it eventually. It doesn't happen overnight. So while you're on that job, because I think I learned more in my first 6 months of development than I learned in all 4 years of school. It's just because you're actually having real projects. They're not baby stepping you through things. They're not trying to come up with situations. These are real life situations. So just keep learning. Back up everything. So I can't tell you how many times I went in and I broke something and it wasn't backed up, and I'm sitting here have many panic attacks. My boss had it backed up, so that was great. But keep a backup for yourself. Give yourself that room to learn so that you don't give yourself a panic attack. Also, become friends with the most senior developer on staff. I say that because I've done it multiple times. I find the most senior person there and become their best friend. They have been through more. They know what they're doing. They have experienced stuff. And I've seen junior developers come in and try to change everything. And then you're sitting here going, but you don't understand the background of what you're trying to change. You don't understand all of the years that we took to make this decision to do it this way. And that doesn't mean don't make suggestions. That just means learn from who's there before we make suggestions. Make sure you ask about their rules, their setup, and their themes. Don't make assumptions. I went in assuming that I was going to know everything because, I'm 25. I got my degree and I know everything now. And I didn't ask questions and I broke a lot of stuff. So if you sit down on your first day and have a conversation. What themes do you use? Do you have a proprietary theme that you're using that we're just developing child themes for? Do you even have something that I can code over? My first job, I didn't code actual themes. They had a theme installed and we used literally a code editor on the front end. I mean, that's not the best setup, but you just don't know until you ask the question. The other thing is look for design patterns. And this is where I really got in trouble with my first job. So I didn't look for what they wanted. I was trying to make things super cool, how I've seen them on builders being done. And I tried to code that. And this is not the company that did that. They wanted simple and quick. And so they're like, this is a 10-hour site build. Why is it taking you 30 hours? I'm like, oh, well, I had this idea and this idea and this idea. And they're like, yeah. And they're like, this is a mom and pop shop. They're not paying for that. They don't have the money to make it that cool. They just wanted something that's developed really well. And with those SEO guidelines that we put forward, that's not what they want. So just make sure that you ask those questions before you get into that situation. The other thing is avoid burnout. I can't tell you guys, even like up to like last week, I get myself into situations regularly where I'm up against a deadline. And my poor husband is like, you have to go to bed at some point. Sleeping is important. And I have stayed up for like 4 nights in a row trying to get the site done because I have a deadline. Really try to avoid that. Make sure that you set those boundaries and keep them. Your family is important. Your mental health is important. What you're doing outside of the job that makes you functional for inside of the job, if it's I'm playing a video game, I'm watching a movie, I'm spending time with my husband and my kids, I'm going on a date. Those are all things that are going to make you a better developer, because if you go into work burnt out, you're not going to succeed. And it is eventually, it will catch up to you and you will burn out. You're going to hate your job. You're going to hate your life. And then it's just not fun anymore. So avoid that. And also know when it's your time to leave. So obviously I've talked about, I have had the first job and the second job. At the end of my first job, I definitely saw the signs that I wasn't happy anymore. I was grumpy all the time. I was working late hours and they weren't paying me for it. And it was just at a point where I was like, I don't like this anymore. And when you get those feelings, sometimes the answer is just push through it. It's not the job. You're just in a phase. But sometimes you really got to take a hard look and say, no, this isn't a phase. There's something off with this company now, or I'm just not happy in this position. I don't feel like I'm growing. I'm not learning outside of work anymore. These aren't challenging to me. And you have to know your first job may not be your dream job, and that is okay. You're not going to necessarily walk into the first job you ever find as a developer and be like, this is it. It doesn't happen all the time that way. Sometimes it does. And for those of you that have that, you are very blessed. But really, truly, know when it's time to kind of move on, when it's time to tie your ties and move on to the next thing. So kind of where this all kind of circles back to is where I am now. So my second job, I ended up basically going in. I asked for a specific amount of money, and I told them I wanted to be team lead within a year. And this is me at 3 years of development going in and saying, I want to be a team lead in a year, and I want X amount of money per year. They met every single thing I wanted. So my year review became my promotion. So I am now leading a small team of developers. So it went from within 5 years, I kind of was able to turn it around. But I think it's because, number one, I was bluntly honest on that interview. I told them exactly what I wanted. And knowing what you want from a job when you go in, especially when you had that first job under your belt, really, really helps, because most companies want to get you where they want to go. Most companies want to see you grow, because if you grow, we grow. So now I get to be a part of interview processes. I don't like telling people no, so that's fun. But I also, the downside of kind of stepping up into leadership is there is a lot more admin work and a lot less code. I still, because I'm in a company of, my development team is me, 2 developers, and my boss. So I have a team that's very small. I still have to code, thank God. But there is a thing with stepping up where I'm now in more meetings and I have to balance more. I now have to have one-on-ones with my team. I get to make policies. I get to set the coding standards, which that's really fun because if they don't code the way I want them to, I can make them code the way I want them to. But the downside is sometimes that means that I'm not coding, I'm developing the policy, I'm developing the standards. So there is a downside to that. And really kind of how you get here is number one, you never stop learning. Keep learning. Just because you have your first job or your second job or your 10th job in development doesn't mean, number one, technology is always advancing. Stuff is always getting depreciated. Learn be kind of in that moment. And there are always going to be somebody in the room, and it's something my mom taught me when I was young. There is always someone that needs your help that is lower on that ring than you. There's always somebody smarter that you can be learning from. So really just figuring that out and learning and figuring out what you need to learn is super helpful, and also trying to bring other people up to your level. And both of those things will help you grow as a person, whether that's leadership or maybe you don't want to be in leadership and that's fine. Maybe you want to stay in that developer role, but still doing that will help you as a developer kind of hone your own skills. The other thing is collaborate. You have a team, and it kind of goes in line with that first point is there is value in other people's opinions. There is a value in other people's experiences. If you totally throw that away the second you become a developer, or you feel like, oh, I'm a senior developer now, I don't need it, you are missing out on a world of learning. I cannot tell you how much I have learned from my junior developer at work, as well as my senior developer at work, right? So there's this thing when you're new, you want to break down the barriers, you want all of this new technology, and the senior developer knows what he knows very, very, very well. And so as a team, number one, managing that is fun. But as a team, that makes us all better. I get introduced to new technologies. If I totally ignored him because I know more than him now, we would not be, my company would not be where it's at in development. If I totally ignore the senior developer and I'm like, no, the old rules don't apply, then we're breaking barriers that our company isn't ready for yet. So really kind of combining that knowledge and figuring out where that sweet spot is great. And again, it helps you learn as a developer. The other thing is you just really want to question things. Does what we're doing make sense? If you have the power of changing it, if you're sitting here and saying, this process no longer makes sense, why am I sitting here and trying to figure out how a website looks on a flip phone? It doesn't make sense anymore. Why are we doing it? If you can't change that, talk to someone who can. Because I can tell you that there's so many things that we have changed because somebody just stepped up and said, why are we doing this? This is a waste of time. And just being able to kind of question those policies will help out a lot. And the last thing is it's think big, and it's my company motto at Big Marlin Group, and it's something that we kind of live by. It's taking things and what can we be doing better? What if we had no limits on what we can do, what would we do? How do we get there? How do we accomplish that? And if you're doing that, you're challenging yourself, you're challenging everybody else around you, and you're not going to lose. And I think the next one is questions. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about things to learn as you were going through your journey toward being, I could do it this way. As you were learning about, or as you were talking about your journey towards being a developer, one of the things that I didn't see on the slide was talking about version control. You mentioned like backup, but like learning how to use Git, Subversion. Do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, so really, when I'm talking about learning and version control, so my boss manages most of that for us now. Most of the time, some sort of manager, if you're working in a small agency like I've been working in, will be kind of controlling that. But what I was specifically talking about is as a new developer, you're going to break stuff. don't count on that version control to back you up. Because the reality is you may not want to tell your boss that you took down an entire website because you did something stupid.
I did that yesterday. Happens.
It does happen. I literally took a website down. I think there was a CSS file that I didn't download right. And I took it down. I had to go to my boss and be like, do we have the CSS file? Because it broke. So it happens all the time. And it's one of those things that it's something that don't just back it up and rely on the company's backups. Try to back it up yourself so you don't feel like you're in a position where, number one, oh my gosh, we can't go back. Or the last time my supervisor backed this up was yesterday. We work on live sites at my job just because of the nature of what we do. And so we don't necessarily push versions out at my job, but I know that there's companies that do.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your energy and your story. I've really, really appreciated your presentation. And I have a question for you about these couple of websites that you put up, freecodecamp.org, udemy.com, etc. And I wonder, have you come across, are these collaborative learning environments where you can create something and then sort of have a cohort and you guys can be alpha testers for one another for these different experiments?
It depends on the code. So Udemy, some of the Udemy classes do have that where you can post code. If you have problems, you can test it, you can whatever. And it just depends on the instructor of that course. So you really have to look for it. Free Code Camp and I think it was the Code Academy one. I don't think they do, because their whole goal is to have you kind of do some individualized things when you have time. Specifically Free Code Camp, I used a lot, but a lot of that is here's the lesson. Go code this, submit this to this test. Yay, you passed. No, you didn't. So it just depends on the class, and you just have to look for it. And really, if you want that, there's a couple of meetups that you can go to. So there's one of my coworkers she's not a coder, and she's in, I think it's like Girl Code It. And they have a meetup every month where they meet together. They can talk about their projects. I haven't been there yet. I want to. But finding those spaces will be really good for that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I talk fast. Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about being a developer?
I think right now there's ever evolving technology. It never stops. There's nothing. I'm one of those people that I started in high school. I didn't want to go to college, so I just kind of went into call centers, and then, okay, well, I've got to go to college now and I've got to figure it out, but I don't know what I want to do. And part of it is I don't like being stagnant. I'm one of those people that would change jobs every couple of years because I would get bored. And you don't get bored in development. It's not something you can do because you always have to be looking for the next thing.
What do you make of kind of junior developers using tools like Toolset and AFC and Crocoblock to kind of start their development journey? Like, are they good tools, or are they kind of traps that people fall into?
It's 50-50. So one of the things I'll tell you is I've fallen in love with ChatGPT recently. But that's the same type of trap, right? Because I can sit there and say, how do I code this? It should give you an explanation. It's great if you read it, but half of the people don't. But would I rather have good, concise code, or would I rather have you use blocks or whatever? I would almost rather you have use blocks. So my company right now uses ACF flex fields. So a lot of that's pre-coded for us. My job is to come up with new ones, and there's just adjustments, right? So we kind of give that to our junior developers already, because I think that that's a really good jumping point. If I want you to code a certain way, why am I not going to give you the tools to do that?
Starting to work is like taking like a theme and tearing pieces apart. Does that help you kind of learn it more, or I'm just wondering?
I think it's 50-50. So I think that going to some of those Udemy courses and whatever, and really studying, if you look on the code handbook that was up there, they have a lot of those themes. But you're going to want to do things that are not in that build. So sometimes taking apart those themes that, okay, so I really want to do this. How does it do it? Yeah, take it apart. Obviously, make sure that if you're doing anything that's going to be live, make sure you credit who needs to be credited, obviously. But definitely make sure that if there is something that you want to take it apart, figure out how it works, break it on purpose, see if you can fix it. I've done that a couple of times. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'll just add to that. For any kind of core WordPress core or WooCommerce core is a great thing to look at, like the code base as it's changing. And I work with a lot of engineers, just understanding what changed and using that as a way to start to understand like what are the things I need to learn, what are the concepts that I need to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with the way that WordPress is changing and the adoption of the block editor as opposed to the classic editor with the tool set that is just
Yeah.
a lot different now than it was maybe 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago, how do you find yourself adapting to that change as a leader of other developers? And how often do you pick up new tools and evaluate them?
So I work with somebody that's very old school. So I have to do a lot of convincing. There's a lot of me going to my supervisor and saying, there's this new code out. Hey, did you know PHP 7 is now completely depreciated? We need to get our people off of that. And it's going to change. And that's just the world of development. And I think I have to find it. And the good thing, even as new developers, if you find something new, build a case study. So for me, I have to use it before I can present it. And I think that in and of itself kind of keeps me sane, because if I go to my boss and say we need to start implementing this tool, and he says yes, and it fails, he's looking at me and he's like, why did you tell me to use this tool? And so I think really number one, as the tools change, use them, see if they're ready yet. So my boss has deemed that, for example, the block editor isn't ready yet. So I'm still kind of building a block theme to prove that we could possibly use it, but I have to build it. I have to show him. And if you are not in the position and you're able just to make the decisions, try to use it yourself before you have that going, and make sure that you're in the WordPress community. I can't tell you how many times I've wrote a blog or something that's like, hey, there's this new tool. Here's the pluses, here's the minuses. So I think really making sure that you're in those blogs, listening to other people, listening to some feedback. I think that's super helpful for finding those right tools.
Where do you see WordPress with security and say 5 years?
I think WordPress security is getting better. I know my company is using iThemes. I know that my company personally, we have decided that we will not take payments other than through PayPal with WooCommerce, right? Like the basically the Stripe, the whatever. And we will not do anything with HIPAA, because you cannot have a HIPAA compliant server without a lot of work. You can make WordPress HIPAA compliant, by the way. It is possible. It's just a lot of work. But because of all of that, I would really like to see some of that just kind of starting to come in the box, some of that work that has to be done anytime you're trying to make stuff HIPAA compliant or payment compliant. If we can get that, then I think that we can start building process stuff and other things. But I think that WordPress in and of itself, as long as you're using a theme, and know that free themes tend to have more security holds than paid themes. And it's just the reality of, if it's a free theme, it's out there on the internet. And so all of the holes are exposed. I think as long as you're following safety protocols, and we have security people here, definitely look at some of those. But we use iThemes to kind of help patch some of our holes. I think making sure that you have those and you're connected to those plugins that really focus on security so you don't have to hyper focus. I think that's the best way to make sure that it's secure. In 5 years, I'm hoping a lot of that's built in, but you just don't know.
Yeah, the authentication process that came like a few years ago and stuff, so we're working on a lot of that.
Yeah, and just like everything else, developers learn. They're getting better every day. And I've seen WordPress grow from the last 7 years that I've been playing with WordPress. It's gone from being very, very basic to there's new security things being installed every day on WordPress. We have, yeah.
Is there any starter themes you would recommend? Like Understrap?
Yeah, so we use Understrap. That's kind of what I also learned on. So it was great that my company used it too. But Understrap is great if you're doing Bootstrap based. I know that my senior developer really strongly suggested that I let you guys know about the Blink themes if you guys are trying to learn. And the reason is then you have to manually install Bootstrap if you want to use it, and you don't have to use it if you don't want to. But it kind of forces you kind of into that zone of what you want to develop. And I think it's called Blank Slate, and it's literally a nothing theme. There is nothing in it. And I think that is a really good experience. But I also think like stuff like Understrap. I've heard of a couple other ones, and they're not coming to mind right now. But even I've seen people start with 2015, and they make a really good theme. Yeah, it's underscore with Bootstrap tied in.
As a leader of other developers, what is your approach to giving feedback when they present code that was subpar?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't like doing that. Not my favorite part of the job, but it happens all the time. I have even my senior developer will present code just because he's having a rough day. And I think it really comes down to number one, examining the code with them and telling them what it is that you don't like, referring back to policy and standards of we code this way. And that way it doesn't feel like a personal attack because so many times developers get very defensive of their code. That's their heart. They poured their soul into it. And so I think really going back to, hey, these are really good ideas, but we have to come back to this is our policy, this is our fundamentals. And I think if you do that and compare it with fundamentals, as long as those are set out, help with that. I think the other part of it is you just have to show them unit testing. This is failing. Look, we use something called Query Monitor to kind of check code errors. This is coming up in the console wrong. This is coming up in whatever wrong. We cannot present this to a customer. It has to be fixed. Anyone else? Because I think we're almost done anyway. But I could probably have time for one or two more. No? All right. Yes, so if you go to the WordPress or the WordCamp, it should be in a link. If not, if you guys can come see me, it's a Google slide, so I can give you guys the link to that. Thank you guys.
Perfect.
Hi, I'm John. That's me. Whoa, that's bright.
You have to point that way.
Holy cow. I need to point it that way to get it to click?
Yep.
Jeez. That's brutal.